Shri Gurubhyo Universal Brotherhood Day after the 9/11 Twin Tower attacks. We had thought that this is a time that we should encourage the inter-religious, interfaith harmony, and we felt the need more strongly then, and we had been doing it since then. So this is the 16th year that we are having this interfaith meeting where representatives of various different faiths, they come, we choose a theme that is pertaining or connected to all different religions, and see how different religions they express their views, their ideas about it. It is also thought that this would be a good occasion for interfaith music. Music is one of the means by which many different religions, the saints, they have expressed their devotional feelings. So that also is arranged on this occasion. This has also the significance that September second week, second Sunday, that was 11th September. That was also 9/11, but 1893, when the Parliament of World Religions was held. Swami Vivekananda gave the speech there with everybody, all other participants, and he stressed the need even then about having these different faiths coming together, and he therefore hailed the spirit of Parliament of Religions. Also, Vedanta Society of Providence, that also was started on September 8th, Sunday, in 1928. So it is in commemoration of that too. Also, we begin our new session after the summer break with this program. So it is also uh, telling people that yes, now we are restarting. So let me read on this occasion that what Swami Vivekananda spoke at the Parliament of Religions, a few lines from his address that was to thank the organizers, and then the concluding remarks that he gave. And the first lecture, sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant, fanaticism, have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization, and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. But their time is come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. And from the final concluding session, he says, if the Parliament of Religions has shown anything to the world, it is this. It has proved to the world that holiness, purity, and charity are not the exclusive possessions of any church in the world, and that every system has produced men and women of the most exalted character. In the face of this evidence, if anybody dreams of the exclusive survival of his own religion and the destruction of all the others, I pity him from the bottom of my heart and point out to him that upon the banner of every religion will soon be written, in spite of resistance, help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, harmony and peace and not dissension. So this is the idea that we all need to understand and imbibe. We will begin today's program, as always on this occasion, with a song that very beautifully gives how this message of Swami Vivekananda came, how Swami Vivekananda traveled to America. I request Kathleen Adams, her husband Jeremy, and others to present this song. Kathleen Adams is the choir leader at the Anisquam Church, where Swami Vivekananda had given his first talk in United States, even before the Parliament of Religions. And then just now, her husband Jeremy presented me a beautiful painting of that church. Just a few minutes ago, he came and presented me this beautiful painting. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. We have illustrious speakers to speak on this beautiful theme of grace and self-effort, which is discussed in all religions, because human beings feel that should I be putting efforts, or God will do everything for me, or what should be, the position that I should take. On philosophical grounds, this idea translates into free will or destiny. So all of us have to deal with this. In fact, when I was looking for the speakers for this evening's program, I put in lot of efforts, but I see what I got was the grace of God. And God presented the best speakers available. You will see soon. So, okay, let's begin with this music. You can follow on the TV screens there.
True.
First among the speakers to speak on this occasion is the Zen teacher, Rev Trudy Shi. I will tell just a few lines by way of her introduction, culled from internet actually. Now all people, their introduction you can find on internet. So I didn't bother much to tell about herself. Anyway, so she is a senior Soto Zen priest in the lineage of Taizen Mazumi. Born in New York City in 1951, she started practicing Zazen with John Daido Luri Roshi, and she moved to the Zen Mountain Monastery in 1981. She received Jokai in 1990 and ordained on October 20, 1991. She continued her clinical pastoral education training, which she began in 1997. She received Denkai from Enkyo Ohara Roshi on December 30, 1998. Jempu became the first Buddhist Association of Clinical Pastoral Education supervisor in 2000. Prior to her formal dharma practice, Jempu was the principal dancer, a very funny combination. You may not always expect that she was a principal dancer and now she is a wonderful Zen teacher. So, different kind of dance, I guess. For the Bot Dior Dance Company in Tel Aviv, Israel. Currently, Jempu is an SCPE, that is the Association of Clinical Pastoral Education, chaplain, supervisor, and Zen priest. She is an adjunct professor at the Institute of Buddhist Studies. She was the acting director and chaplain supervisor for the Beth Israel Medical Center for 4 years. So friends, we are very fortunate to get her for this occasion, and I request her to present her thoughts. Thank you.
Wow, I can't believe I did all that. I'm very happy to be here tonight, and thank you all for coming. And the music was beautiful, so from my dance career, classical ballet, just in case you were wondering. I wanted this talk to be from a Zen Buddhist perspective, but Zen Buddhism asks that it be from my own person. So it'll be a mix of that. And the topic, grace and self-effort, were things that I've been thinking about for a very, very long time. So it was interesting that you brought that as a topic. So I'm thrilled to present myself and from a Zen Buddhist lens, and hopefully the way I give talks is hopefully it all comes together at the end, and I hope that's the way it works tonight too. The only part of Zen Buddhism that I'd like to introduce to you is there's so much teaching within Buddhism, like every other religion, but I'd like you to have in your mind that in Buddha's enlightenment, just keep this in mind, that when he was enlightened, the first thing he actually said was I'm not quoting it exactly, but isn't it amazing, isn't it marvelous that each of us is perfect and complete and lacking nothing? So just wrap your head around that for a second. We're perfect and complete, lacking nothing. So if you think about grace and effort, right? How does that connect? If I'm perfect and complete and I'm lacking nothing, that basically means I don't need to do much effort to get to what if I'm already perfect, right? So it's a funny kind of thing, but guess what? All of us Buddhist students, I was in residence for 12 years at 10 hours of sitting a day, added up. It's a lot of work and a lot of effort. So I'm not saying it doesn't take effort, but I'd like for this talk to show you how I've come to think about that and incorporate that into my own personal religion and my own personal life. I think what I remember most about, I'm going to start with grace. And it was interesting you mentioned dance, because I think my first experience of grace was through music and dance, ballet. And one of the things I remember most about it was I must have been like 16 years old, and I remember being in class, and talk about effort. It's great effort to be a dancer. You just never stop practicing to improve, to make your arm stay right, make your leg lift right. It just doesn't end. You can always do better, right? So I came from that perspective. And I remember when I was 16, I loved to jump. It was like, that's that spiritual part of me, maybe. I like to leave the earth, right? It's a natural, transcendent feeling. So I loved jumping, and I remember this one class, we had this one particular beautiful piece of music that was being played. We had a pianist for our classes. I was very fortunate in that way. And he played this just amazing, I don't remember who it was, but it, sometimes music hits you in a way that lifts your spirit, just like what you just heard. And so the music was getting inside of me in a way that it had never done before. And I remember we were doing just simple jumps, bouncing in a way from the floor, changement it's called. So you go from a closed fifth position, jump in the air and change your feet to another position. And I was jumping, and the music was starting to get inside of me and lift me. And all of a sudden, there was a point where it became effortless. Now, it takes a lot to jump off the floor. And I remember at some point, it just got higher and higher. And at that point, I was almost watching myself do this. It was like this was happening outside of what I was in control of. And I was thrilled, but it was, I just got higher and higher, and I swear I was like so high off the floor in the simple jump, and that was what I consider grace, and I thought I was sort of crazy or projecting, but then the teacher asked me to do it again with the same music, and the same thing happened. I was as astounded as they were. I was completely like, how could this be? How could this be effortless? What's going on here? And that stayed with me through my whole life, and to the point I'm sharing it with you. It's still there. And a lot of meditation, a lot of experiences I've had have been that switch from effort to absolutely no effort, and even better, somehow we know how to do everything perfectly and completely without effort, but here's the piece that comes in with the effort to get to the no effort. So I'd like to start with that. When I was looking up a definition of grace, because I'm always nervous I'm not going to be able to know what this word means, because I'm not a word person, actually. I'm a more physical, somebody called me a synesthetic, I think somebody mentioned I was, which is through tactility, through feeling, through senses. I exist that way. So I found this definition, and I loved it. And it said, grace is the whole of God's activity toward man. So it doesn't 100% do what I feel, but I think it holds something beautifully. The whole of God's activity toward man or woman. the whole of God's activity. So it doesn't say just God's activity, it says the whole. And there's something important in that, the whole of God's activity towards man or woman. And in a way, it points to something happens. It descends upon us. It fills up every cell or pore of our bodies. And we are transformed, but not really changed to something else. We are transformed into a fuller human being without much effort. Grace doesn't demand effort. So that's very beautifully put for I think this was my favorite topic that I've ever talked on. But the person themselves has to be open to receive it. And in a way, you have to be prepared. And what does that mean, to be prepared to receive grace? I'm a chaplain in a hospital, and many times you'll be doing prayer. And during that time when I'm with a patient, if I open myself just the way I did to the music, open all possibilities of some chaplains say being used, letting go, let God. It's like there's a lot of phrases that talk about it, but basically it's leaving yourself outside the door, the ego part of ourselves, and opening to something greater, something that knows more than this brain, and allowing that to function. And when that happens, the patient, the intimacy with me as chaplain, that's the hat, and the patient, the connection, the intimate connection, to me is godly. That relationship of pure intimacy, which is like pure music, is an unspoken, even though you speak the words of a prayer, it's an unspoken connection that's so powerful. It's felt by both of us. And actually, we're not both at that time. We are this one thing, opening up together to this larger energy, God, universe, whatever word you want to put on it. I'd like to talk about, because I think I need some kind of a foundation to help a little bit. So in Zen Buddhism, we use the ocean and the wave as a way to help people to understand, in a way, what I've just said. So I'm going to tell it in different ways. If you imagine that grace is an activity, but the source of that activity is the ocean, okay? Let's say the ocean right now covers the whole universe. There's nothing but ocean. So just put your imagination into that. Everything is ocean. So just imagine everything is ocean. And out of that ocean, like what we're used to seeing, you see waves or ripples or things come out of that ocean. And that's fine, right? Those waves are what? Nothing but the ocean, right? That's pretty clear. If I'm a wave coming out of the ocean, that wave is the ocean, right? But we name it wave. And what happens if you think of all of us as in this room right now as different waves, right? We're all these different waves, and wonderful waves, right? Big waves, small waves. Waves with glasses, waves with red hair, waves with white, right? We're all these incredible different waves that are coming out of this ocean. And in the beginning, when we're children, very young children, we don't have that idea of separation. In Buddhism, separation will equal suffering because it separates the wave from the ocean as being something different, right? And that's what happens as we grow up. We individuate and we decide, wait a second, I'm not the ocean. I'm this wave. I'm this really unique wave, and I am this, and I work at this job, and I have this kind of, whatever it is, stock and I do this, and this is what I like, and this is what I don't like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can see where this is going, right? So as we do that, what happens is we sort of start to build this concrete foundation under our wave that separates us more and more and more from this oceanic, which is us, but we forget, right? And the Buddha says, each of us is perfect and complete, lacking nothing. He's talking from an oceanic perspective. And he's saying, then he said, but they have not yet realized this. Basically, we have forgotten. We forget because we get scared. We cling to this me of this wave. This is my wave, this is me, and you're over there, and I'm over here. Especially in a place that's asking for brotherhood, right? Even brotherhood is a brother. How are you with your siblings? Huh? I know how I am with my siblings, right? But if you knew that your brother's wave was the ocean, I am the ocean, then there's real brotherhood. There's not me and you, brother. There's real brotherhood. And so that's basically where Zen Buddhism likes to end up. It doesn't say there isn't a wave, and doesn't say there isn't an ocean, doesn't say there isn't an individual, doesn't say there isn't a God. But what it does do is saying, let's look at how we've separated ourselves, how we've forgotten, how we've replaced this incredible field that's open to us with this small contracted idea of self, right? And how easy, effortless it might be if we could just let go. If a wave lets go, what happens? Ooh, we're back. We're home, right? But that's not what we do, and it's not most of our journeys. I don't know any oceanic wave except, there is this great, one of the things that's said in Zen that I love is swallow the ocean with a single gulp. And that'll do it too, right? Or think on non-thinking. I like that one too, right? We're so busy holding it together. If we could just follow that exhale out of our body, we will remember, at least, even for a moment, that we're ocean, right? That there is no separation. So from there would be no self-effort. But now let's go to self-effort, okay? Because I don't know about you, but I worked my ass off. Sorry about the word, but I worked really hard, basically, to let go. Let go of what I was holding on to. That grip we have. So let's look at, I hardly ever follow my own notes. Let's look at self-effort, and I call it the warrior's path, right? Look at, we all know about martial arts, right? And you know about that black belt, right? Well, do you know what it was originally? It was a white belt that you worked so hard and you sweated so hard that white belt, after 20 or 30 years of practice, was a black belt, right? But now, what do? We give them the white belt, and if they get through that, they get the red and the yellow and the green and the blue and whatever it is. And then, if you're really good, you get the black belt. So we don't teach people, you're the ocean. You were always the ocean. You've always been the ocean. You always will be the ocean. Why are you trying for the red belt? Why are you trying to work so hard to get to the black belt? You're missing something here, right? Practice letting go. Follow that exhale. The exhale is your best friend, I swear. If you follow your exhale, you at least will touch quieter waters, just like centered prayer, quieter waters. Any kind of focused attention, quieter waters. Mantras, quieter waters. Rosaries, quieter waters. You know, it's a great start. Quiet the waters. But this is from the Desert Fathers, another one I love for the effort part, okay? This is called A Call to Awaken, the Courage to Burn. Okay, this is going from the other side. Once a young novice in the desert went to an elder and said, "Father, according..."
This is not self-effort.
We could hear the sound and follow the sound to when it disappears like a good bell. If you follow that sound all the way, you'll also get to quieter waters, by the way. That's why those crystal bells are so nice to hear. Anyway, so I'm doing this again. Once a young novice in the desert went to an elder and said, "Father, according as I am able, I keep my little prayers. I keep my little rule and my meditation and my contemplative silences." That's a good student, right? "And according as I am able," humble, "I strive to cleanse my heart of thoughts." A good student. And then he says, "Now what more should I do?" Right? How do I get that black belt? Right? What more should I do? The elder rose, he stood up, and he stretched out his hands, and his fingers were lit like fires. And he said, "Why not be totally changed to fire? Why not burn? Do the whole thing. Don't do the little pieces. Why not be totally changed to fire?" Right? What a great teacher. Right? I agree. You don't have to wait this lifetime, next lifetime, this lifetime, next time, this, next. Honestly, you are perfect and complete, lacking nothing. But we have been cluttered up. We are congested, right? We have things that we can't let go of. We have possessions that mean so much to us. We can't do this because of that. Or we just say, "I can't." Who's saying I can't? You know, who's telling you that you're lesser? Who's telling you that you're so separate that there's no way for you to be quiet and to remember who you are? Whose voices do you hear? Right? In Buddhism, I'm not going to go into the Four Noble Truths, but that's the foundation of a lot of Buddhism, and these truths are really, the second noble truth is, the first here I go, I'm not going to do it. Life is suffering is the first noble truth. Second noble truth is there's a cause to suffering, and that cause, I'm only going to go through two of them, because that cause is dukkha, or attachment, or clinging. That creates suffering. So why does that create suffering? Because if I think this doesn't belong to me, this isn't oceanic, if that's something else, if you're something else, if you're something else, if you're something else, I'm separating, and I will have suffering. I will have suffering. You know? We separate, we suffer. It's that simple. You know, if we could all take that exhale together, at least we'd get to a quiet place. At least start there. Right? I wanted to talk about when I was at the monastery. Well, somebody has to tell me when my time is up, because I tend to keep going otherwise. There was this student we have during our meditation retreats, which can last 6 to 10 days and 10 hours of sitting a day, so it's very intensely focused on letting go. In a way, if you imagine we start as this big onion, in Zen what we do is we peel the layers one by one. And you know, if you know about onions, that outer layer is pretty easy, right, to peel. It almost comes off by itself. But if you keep going down, it gets harder and harder and harder. And I think the most difficult part of Zen practice for me was letting go of things that I thought, why should I let go of? You know, things that I think are good, like ecstasy, bliss. I mean, how could that be bad? But there's clinging to that as well. And that took me a long time, right? That part took me a long time, because that's the core of who I thought I was. If I let go of that part, then my love of God, my love of spirit, you know, all that had to go with it. So who wants to do that? But I didn't even think that way. I think that's when you really need a teacher, because you don't even see what you hold most dearly needs to be let go of. That's when you really need a teacher. You know? So let me tell you about Angie. She was a cook in our monastery, very young. She was in her 20s, very good student, one of those people who goes for the colored belts, right? She was working her way into being even a better student. And she was the cook, and we cooked sometimes for 100, 200 people, you know, and I don't know if any of you have cooked for a big monastery, but they're big pots. They are big pots, and you use this big tool to you know, it's like with both hands you've got to turn the spaghetti sauce, right? So that was Angie's job. And at the end of one of our retreats, we had what's called open dokusan, which is during the week we meet with our teacher one-on-one in a private room, and basically he's asking you to wake up to who you are. And there are many, many ways to do that, and he guides you accordingly, or she guides you accordingly. This was Daido Roshi, my greatest teacher. I honor him in this talk. But Angie was doing open dokusan, where the whole community can get online in front of the audience and ask questions to the teacher directly. Okay, so you can imagine everybody's sitting. There's about 40 to 60 people in the retreat, and it's called to step online to have a question for the teacher, or to test your understanding of where you are. So Angie, our good student, runs up there, first online, right? Everybody's met Angie's in their life, I'm sure, and she's like this, like she knows something, right? So the teacher is sitting up there in meditation we sit on the floor, and he goes, he just gave a talk on letting go. So that was the theme of the energy that was going around the room. So she's up there to either show her understanding or to ask a question. So she goes up there, and Daido Shi goes, yes, you know, like, are you going to show me your understanding? You're going to ask me a question? And she goes, I'm presenting letting go, like that. You know, she's showing that she can do it. So he goes, okay, show me. He does that show me in a way that ruffles the back hair on your head, you know, show me, you know. So she's just showing the everyday thing of stirring that pot, right? She's holding with both her hands. She's going like, with the face like, gotcha, I'm just doing my everyday life, showing you that I can be totally present in my everyday life. You know, it's carrying water, chopping wood, here I am stirring the pot, right? And he just looks and he goes, okay, now let go of that ladle. And she's you know, doing this thing. And then you realize, or we all realized in the audit, you know, in the community, sitting there watching, that she had all of a sudden projected all of her, all the things she grabbed onto, all the things that were important to her, focused into that ladle. And she looks at her hands, and he goes, well, let go of that ladle. And she goes, I can't let go. And he goes, let go of that ladle. And she goes, I can't let go. And she's like, it was torturous. You know, we were all like crying for her because it was like, and we were going, just open those fingers, you know. And she couldn't do it. It was all there for all of us to see. I'll never forget it because we all learned a lot. I don't know about her, but we all learned a lot, right? He said, and Daido, she said, one finger, open just one finger. And she was like, she couldn't do it, you know? But it's all of us, is what I'm trying to say. It's not just Angie. We all are like that when it comes to honestly letting go. It's one thing to say, okay, like she did in the beginning, you know, I'm going to show you. I'm totally present to my life. I'm awake and alive and present to my life. And she was ready to show that. But when a push comes to shove, we hold on with our lives because we are afraid if we were to drop our wave, what would happen to me? Right? What would happen to me? Where would I be? Would I come back? Would I recognize myself? How do I know? And it's scary. And that's the place that we need to do the most work, you know? And as a chaplain with dealing with death and dying, I watch it. I watch that fear. Most of us are not afraid of dying. We're afraid of the pain of death, you know? But the dying also is like, if I let go of my wave, I lose, right? I lose, don't I lose? Do we lose? Impossible. It's impossible. We are that ocean, right? Just like I said from the beginning, you don't lose a thing. You don't gain a thing. All of this is mishugas, craziness, right? It's all illusionary. It's all crazy. But we invest ourselves in it so much, and that becomes our life. Our life becomes the clinging. And of course we got to make self-effort. We got to make self-effort because we want to progress, but we're deluding ourselves moving that way, you know? But yes, we have to do it until hopefully you come. Sometimes it happens to you, you know, something traumatic happens in your life, or you lose somebody you've loved, or so many different things that shake up that wave enough for you to go, whoa, right? You fall, the rug's pulled from under you. And then you might have one moment when you go, the body's gone, but the love I have for that person is still here. And maybe it's still everywhere. And maybe that ocean is pure love. For all I know, that makes sense, you know? So what do I lose? You know, from my perspective, nothing. You don't lose a thing. I want to end with a famous Zen master called Joshi. And he sort of sums this up in a different, little slightly different way, but says the same thing. Just because it is so clear, it takes a lifetime to realize it. If you quickly acknowledge that candlelight is fire, you will find that the rice has long been boiled. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Trudy. The Angies story was very illuminating. Some time back, I had gone to a program of meditation arranged by Thrive, an organization giving, the interfaith meditative practices across different religions. Mainly it is from the Jewish community. And there, after the meditation that I was giving, there was a wonderful group of singers that I saw there. And the music was so much, calming music. It was not a music that would excite, but the music that would bring down the excitement and put you in a very calm mood. So I went to the leader and asked, will you be able to come for our Universal Brotherhood Day program? And she said, well, I will certainly like to do that, but let me look at my calendars and so forth. That lady is here today with her group. Her name is Diane, and they go by Rauch Singers. And she actually works at Brown Medical School as a professor. Am I right? Professor? Yeah. So, but we had met earlier at a Brown program on Universal Brotherhood Day, but that was 2011. So now she will be presenting her group's music. She will introduce things about her group. Thank you.
Thank you, Swami. Can people hear me? I'm just going to say a few words. Do I need to use the microphone? Yeah. No. Sorry. So as the group is just getting assembled, I just wanted to quote the great Sufi mystic Rumi, who says, there are 100 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. And we really take this to heart because there are so many ways to worship in so many faiths. And for us, for our little group, singing music and song is our way to connect with the divine. We are the Ruach singers. We are from Temple Habonim. And today we are joined by two friends and collaborators, co-collaborators. Actually, let's move a little bit closer this way. And we believe that music actually creates a bridge that can connect us heart to heart, past the differences of faith, past the differences of culture, race, religion, and we come to a common place where our hearts are open and the music carries us. So we actually sing music from different faith traditions, trying to find a universal message that we can embrace. So today you will hear us sing some words in Arabic, we will sing in Hebrew, we will sing in English, we will sing music from the Jewish tradition, and we will sing music from the African American gospel tradition, because the message speaks to us.
Diane?
Yes.
Can I request you to use microphones?
Oh, yes.
The reason is, that things get recorded and also many are hearing it online, so.
Sure, whatever's best.
So that is, I know you don't, normally you don't use it.
It's fun. Did everyone hear what I had to say? Okay. So our first song, actually these songs aren't as calming, Swami.
I hope that's okay. These songs are actually a bit energizing. And the first song we're going to sing, I chose this song before hurricane season started, but it's called The Storm is Passing Over. And I think it has special meaning in these past weeks. But it really talks about, I take it to be the internal storm we have and the external storm of the world. And through grace and self-effort, that storm may pass over, and then we say, hallelujah.
Courage, my soul, and let me journey on. Though the night is dark, and I am far from home, praise be to God, the morning light appears. The storm is passing over. The storm is passing over. The storm is passing over. Hallelujah. 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 The storm is passing over. The storm is passing over. The storm is passing over. Hallelujah. Thunder rolling and billows shake the ground. See the lightning flashing and dark clouds all around. Moses crossed the sea and calmed the angry waves. The storm is passing over. The storm is passing over. The storm is passing over. Hallelujah. 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 The storm is passing over. The storm is passing over. The storm is passing over. Hallelujah.
When that storm passes over, there's a chance to accept joy and to see divinity and to connect with grace. But you have to be...
But you have to be ready to see it, and you have to be ready to get on board. This next song also comes from the gospel tradition. It's called My Ship. And there's a call and response, and I'm wondering if you could all join us. I'm going to say, get on board, and you're going to say,
get on board.
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 So if this message speaks to you and you want to get on that ship that's filled with the Holy Spirit and joy divine, get on board.
Get on board.
Go tell.
We'll change the lyrics. 1, 2, 1. Go tell all my friends that my ship just came sailing it in.
It was filled with the Holy Spirit. It was filled with joy divine. Wouldn't you like to sail on a ship like mine? Oh, go tell all my friends that my ship just came sailing it in. It was filled with the Holy Spirit. It was filled with joy divine. Wouldn't you like to sail on a ship like mine?
Oh, get on board.
Get on board.
Get on board now.
Get on board.
Get on board.
ship like mine. Oh, get on board. Get on board. Oh, get on board now. Get on board. Get on board. Get on board now. Get on board. You're tired. Get on board. You're weary. Get on board. You haven't got a friend. Get on board. To get on board now. Get on board. Tell all my friends about my ship that just came sailing in. Well, it was filled with the Holy Spirit. It was filled with joy divine. Wouldn't you like to sail on a ship like mine?
And our last song. In the Jewish tradition, it is said that the greatest gift of all is the gift of peace. So we wanted to close with a song that was born out of the Arab-Israeli conflict. And it's a song that says both shalom and salam, peace, peace, shanti, in all cultures and all religions. Peace is really what we all aspire to. So some of you may know this song, and please join us. And there's going to be a little bit of a call and response. So I'm going to say salam, and you'll just say salam, peace, peace. So, Ojibo shalom aleinu, for those who may know this song.
Doesn't want to go away. Let's see. Let's see. D. Turn this off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
Ojibo shalom aleinu. Ojibo shalom aleinu. Ojibo shalom aleinu. Ve'al kulam. Ojibo shalom aleinu. Ojibo shalom aleinu. Ojibo shalom aleinu. Ve'al kulam.
Many thanks, dear Diane and her group of Rausch singers. Now we shall have Mufti Imam ul Haq, Ikram ul Haq, as our next speaker. He is the resident Imam of Masjid al-Islam in North Smithfield, Rhode Island, and Mufti of Darul Ifta, Rhode Island. Mufti Ikram ul Haq memorized the entire Quran at the age of 11 in a short period of just 13 months. Thereafter, he went on to study Islamic Sharia at the Institute of Islamic Sciences, Islamabad, Pakistan. After completing the course there, he moved to Buffalo, New York, and graduated with an Alim degree in 2002 from Al Madinah Institute of Higher Islamic Education. Thereafter, he studied Islamic fiqh under direct supervision of some of the world's very prominent muftis at Jamia Darul at Karachi, Pakistan. He graduated from IFTA course with a mufti degree in 2005. He has also received ijaz in hadith from many great scholars of Islam, including Hazrat Maulana Sarfaraz Khan Safdar, Hazrat Maulana Salimullah Khan Sahib, Hazrat Maulana Zahid or Rashidi, and Hazrat Maulana Sindhi. He is author of many books. Some of them are Companion of Hazi, translation of Rafiq-e-Hazi by Mufti Muhammad Rafi Usmani. He actually is coming from Hajj right now, from the holy Mecca. He has just arrived a little while ago. So, Islamic Perspective, that is another book, Islamic Perspective of Photography and Pictures. It is translation of Tasveer ke Ahkam by Mufti Taqi Usmani. Rulings of Sharia for issues of Muslims of the West, a practical manual of Islam that is in progress. Have you completed it?
Yes.
Oh, good. Because maybe on the website there it is written in progress, but then that was probably long back. So good. And another book also, Rulings of Jhaka on contemporary issues. Have you completed that? Great. So yeah, there is no incomplete book. He might have started on some other books which are in progress now. So you can see he's a tremendously gifted and learned person. Aside from being a resident imam at Masjid al-Islam, he is passionately involved in activities outside the masjid as well, such as delivering lectures at various colleges and universities, participating in different religious meetings, providing invaluable religious advice to Islamic schools, and participating in interfaith dialogue. Actually, our acquaintance is mostly at interfaith dialogues. And there I saw that how he connects to different religious ideas, is very comfortable with people of different religions, and is very sensitive to the cause of human sufferings, to help to remove poverty and so forth. So I had been requesting people, last year also I was thinking of inviting him, but could not contact. This time also I was not getting his contact number. And then the director of the Rhode Island State Council of Churches, who had spoken here earlier, I asked him, do you have any contact information? And he readily gave it to me. And saying that, but remember, it is very difficult to get him. He is the only mufti all around in this area. And so everybody calls him. Moreover, he is such a wonderful speaker. So again, that is, very difficult to get. But he gave me the phone number, and it is by the grace of God, I got him on phone, and he said, yes, I will come. And here we have him to present his perspective on this idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji, for your kind words of my introduction and reminding me that there are a lot of things on the website that needs to be updated. It is an honor for me to be invited to speak at this Universal Brotherhood Day, and I'm very grateful to Swamiji for extending that invitation to me a few months ago and allowing me to be here with all of you on this beautiful afternoon on a Sunday. As Swamiji mentioned, I just returned late last night from a very long journey and a very meaningful journey of Hajj. It's a journey that is very spiritual, very uplifting, and it teaches us a lot about humanity. There are about 4 million people of all colors, all races, all ethnicities, all speaking different languages, and the only thing that was bringing them together was the humanity and the faith in God. So there are a lot of things that unite us as human beings than those that divide us. And although devil is very powerful, but the God that we all believe in is more powerful. So we, at the end of the day, can conquer, can defeat devil with the help of God. And that help of God comes with the unity as humanity. So this is a beautiful topic that was chosen for today. And my talk will be from an Islamic perspective, because I'm a Muslim scholar, and I can talk very thoroughly from an Islamic perspective on the topic of grace and self-effort. Islam is a religion which gives importance to both inner belief as well as outer actions and works. Being a Muslim does not entail that one merely carries out acts of ritual worship, nor that one only hold a certain belief in the heart without it being apparent in one's actions. Some incorrectly believe that Islam places deeds, actions over and above inner faith, while in actuality, Islam teaches that inner faith is the first, foremost, and most important of the 5 pillars and fundamentals of Islam. The Islamic view is that it is both inner belief as well as outer action which makes up what is known in Islam as Iman or faith. Islam teaches that salvation is attained by God's grace, and that God bestows His grace upon those who have both inner belief and good actions, good practices. Islam teaches that although belief is the most important factor, it is not the only one. In order to attain salvation, inner belief must be coupled with good actions. Islam teaches that deeds and self-effort are a branch of faith. Faith is not defined as mere inner belief, but rather is the sum of inner belief and deeds. Thus, faith and deeds are not two separate entities, but rather one is a part and component of the other. Therefore, the debate about faith versus works is irrelevant in an Islamic discourse, since the latter is a part and component of the former. Muslims believe that faith is comprised of three parts. Number one, faith, belief in the heart, iman bil qalb in Arabic. And in Urdu, it is said, dil se tasdeeq, iman bil qalb, or believing from the heart. And the second part is affirmation by the tongue, to say by the tongue that there is none worthy of worship except God, the creator of heavens and earth, and the creator of all human beings, and everything that exists in this entire universe. And the last one, actions by the limbs, by the body. These three things together make up the Islamic faith. So one has to believe from the heart, say it from the tongue, what is right, what is truthful, and do the right things. Of these three components of faith, belief in the heart is considered the most important. Therefore, even from this angle, it is incorrect to say that Islam emphasizes outward actions over inner belief. Rather, no works are accepted by God if one does not hold correct inner belief. One such as the belief that only God is to be worshipped. God says in Quran, لَإِنْ أَشْرَكْتَ لَيَحْبَطَنَّ عَمَلُكَ وَلَتَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Chapter 39, verse 65. Meaning, if you associate others with God as partners, then surely all your works will be rendered vain, and you will certainly be among those who have lost. Actions are only accepted if correct belief is held. Thus, whenever God Almighty mentions works in the Quran, the word belief precedes it, indicative of the Islamic view that belief is of utmost importance. There are many verses in Quran that talk about faith and good actions at the same time. In order to have the pleasure of God, in order to succeed, you have to have faith and you have to have good actions. Faith alone is not enough, and good actions alone are not enough. And as God says, and those who believed and did good works, they are the inhabitants of paradise, abiding therein eternally. And to explain this concept, Muslim scholars have likened faith to a tree. Belief in the heart is considered the root. It is hidden beneath the surface because our heart is not visible. So our faith is inside the heart and it's invisible. Not visible to the eye is our faith, yet the root is what gives a tree a firm foundation, without which there can be no tree. Actions then are considered what is apparent above the surface, such as the trunk and the branches of the tree. This is one of the reasons why it is improper to debate faith versus work. A person may compare one tree to another, but it would be invalid to compare a tree with its branches, or faith with works. However, if we compare belief in the heart to actions of the limbs, then we know that the former is the root or foundation, whereas the latter is the branch. The root or foundation is always more important than a branch. A branch can fall off and the tree still stands, or sprout anew. But if one chops the root, then the entire tree falls and ceases to exist. Belief in the heart is the foundation of the tree of faith, without which it dies. Good works are the trunk and the branches of this tree. If there were no branches and only a root, there would in essence be no tree, because that tree would be of no benefit, no shade, nothing. The more the branches, the more perfect the tree is. Therefore, we say that the base of faith is belief of the heart, but it is incomplete without good works. While a tree is not a tree without its trunk and branches, a tree cannot stand without its foundation or root. Therefore, the Islamic position is stated in this way. Faith is the fundamental and most important pillar of Islam. Faith consists of both the belief in the heart and the actions of the body. The importance of belief in the heart can be demonstrated by the fact that seemingly good deeds can be negated if belief in the heart is not present. For example, giving money in charity to seek the pleasure of God is a good belief accompanied by a good action. And as such, there is a reward from God for this action, for this charity. Yet, if one were to donate money in charity in order to boast of one's generosity, in order to gain fame and popularity from the people, then this is a seemingly good action with an evil intention and corrupt inner belief. And as such, this does not earn God's good pleasure at all. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, may the mercy and blessings of God be upon him, said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, actions are judged by their intentions. What is meant by this is that actions of the tongue or the limbs are of no avail if they are not rooted in the belief of the heart. Belief in the heart results in good works. Islam teaches that there is no dichotomy between belief and works. Rather, belief and good work complement each other and are intertwined. The person who claims to believe and does not show it with good work is a hypocrite. If a man loves his wife in his heart, then he will treat her well with his actions. If a man neglects and abuses his wife, then surely he doesn't truly love her. Love manifests itself in good actions, in treatment. If a man loves his wife, then he will do what pleases her. If a man truly loves God, he would show that love in his obedience to God's commandments. Such a person would know to do good deeds to earn God's pleasure. He would strive through his works to seek the pleasure of God. And that is the path to salvation. One of the famous Islamic scholars from the early centuries, Hassan al-Basri, may God have mercy on his soul, he said, explaining this concept, faith is not by embellishment or wishful thinking, but it is what settles in the heart and is verified through your actions. Whoever says good but does not do good will have his words compared to his deeds by God. Whoever says good and does good will have his words raised by his deeds. This is because God said in Quran, إِلَيْهِ يَسْعَدُ الْكَلِمُ الطَّيِّبُ وَالْعَمَلُ الصَّالِحُ يَرْفَعُ. Verse 10, chapter 35, the meaning of which is, to God ascends the good word, and the righteous deed raises it. The truth of the matter is that those who claim to love God, yet have no good works to prove this, neither have belief in their hearts, nor have conviction in their tongues, nor do their actions reflect anything but the emptiness of their hearts. We find that many people make ostentatious claims about their supposed love for God, yet they do not back it up with their deeds. A Muslim must recite the declaration of faith, as it is known in Arabic, shahada. The word literally means to witness, and it means to be a witness that there is nothing worthy of worship except God. Yet, witnessing with one's tongue is an easy matter. It is a much greater sign of belief to witness God's glory with one's body, actions, and even life. It is a matter of common sense. A man may say he loves his country, but it is a higher level for a man to risk his life in the army defending his country. It may sound cliche, but it is a truism that actions speak louder than words. Oftentimes, we find that people telling us how much they love God, but they do not know that we Muslims are too occupied showing how we love God. We show our love to God 5 times a day, when we bow to Him in prayer, and when we adhere to God's commands. Moreover, Muslims are too humble and shy to claim that our love for God is so strong that we are promised paradise. Who is superior? The person who continually boasts his love for God, or the one who humbly manifests it in his good actions, toiling away to please his Lord, the Most High? In the Quran, God Almighty commanded the Prophet to tell those who claim to love God to back it up with their actions in obedience. As he says, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي. If you indeed love Allah, then follow me. Then God will love you and forgive you for your sins. For God is most forgiving and most merciful. Chapter 3, verse 31. This is a challenge from God Almighty, whereby he tells us that if we truly love God, then we should obey God's commandments to prove it. If, however, we defy God's laws, then we do not really love God. And this is insincerity and mere hypocrisy. Some people may think that Islam teaches that paradise can be earned by one's own actions and by one's own deeds. This is not true. The Islamic belief is that neither faith nor works are what enters us into heaven. Rather, it is only God's grace and his mercy which allows us to enter paradise. To believe otherwise is to question God's power and absolute sovereignty. God is the forgiver, and to claim that man can grant himself forgiveness is to take away from God's names and attributes. This would be exalting the creation to the status of the creator, making oneself a partner in God's glory and power, which is the heinous sin of associating partners in worship to God. A house in this worldly life costs a certain price. The better and larger it is, the more its price. A mansion costs more than a regular sized house, and a palace costs more than a mansion. One can only imagine how much a palace in paradise costs. If deeds were our currency, then the truth is that none of us could have saved up enough good deeds to be able to afford even 1 square inch of property in paradise. One of the reasons that we human beings could never save up enough good deeds is that we're so heavily in debt already to God. No amount of good deeds could repay God Almighty back for what he has given us, such as our eyesight, our hearing, and our hands, our feet, our limbs, our heart. Many scholars remind us that every time we breathe, even that new breath is a favor from God. So we owe more. Every time you breathe, you owe more to God. So our debt to God never reduces, never decreases. It always increases. So there will never be a time when we can say, I have paid off God's debt. Nobody will attain eternal salvation due to his own level of faith or deeds, but rather it is only attained through God's grace. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, be aware that none among you can attain salvation only by virtue of his own deeds. The people asked him, O God's messenger, not even you? To which the Prophet replied, not even me, unless God encompasses me with his mercy and grace. Our belief is that the most righteous from humanity was Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Yet we find that even he would only enter paradise due to God's grace. This becomes even clearer in another prophetic saying, in which we are told of a man who did good deeds his entire life, 500 years, and then thinks he will enter into paradise on the basis of his actions alone, without the grace of God. So when he died, God questioned him, would you like to enter my heaven by your good actions and your good deeds, on account of your good deeds, or by my mercy and by my grace? He said, I worshiped you for 500 years. I have enough credit to take me to paradise. So God told the angels, okay, why don't you measure his good deeds against my favors? When they started doing that, All of his 500 years good deeds went in one place, and he could not pay off even one favor of God. So God said, now, would you still like to go on account of your good actions or on account of my mercy and my grace? He said, yes, on your grace and on your mercy, I would like to enter into heaven. So that is the reality. So, as the Prophet explained, such a person who is arrogant enough to think that his own deeds will earn him paradise will be thrown into hell because he disbelieved in God's grace. Yet, this is not to diminish the importance of faith and good works. Muslims believe that God Almighty grants His grace and mercy to those who have faith and who do good works. God Almighty says, and He answers those who believe and do good works and gives them more out of His grace. He increases them. And in one place in Quran, God said, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you are grateful to me, I will give you more. Who here would like to give more if we thank Him more? No one. But God is the only one who promises us that if we show gratitude, if we are obedient and we show humility on our part, because only God has the right of arrogance, no one else. Only God is the one who's self-sufficient, who doesn't need anybody, who doesn't even need angels, who doesn't need anything. Everyone else, all of us here, we're dependent. We need help in every single thing. We need help to breathe. If there was no oxygen, we could not breathe. So we're depending on God for oxygen that He gives. We're dependent on day and night. We're dependent on the sun. We're dependent on the moon. We're dependent on the water. We're dependent on the food. We're dependent for every single thing. So that's why God said, Wallahu al-ghaniyyu wa antumul fuqara. God is the only one who is self-sufficient and self-sustaining. All of you, all of us, we are in need and always will be in need. May this gathering be blessed by our Creator, and may we remain united in face of all the tragedies that are coming our way. Everything is happening. The Harvey in Texas, and today the Irma in Florida, and so many disasters, and so many human beings are suffering in Myanmar or Burma. In the last 2-3 weeks, there have been almost 2 million who had to flee. And a lot of persecution is going on. So we need to turn to God and ask for help, because there's no one who's more powerful than God. And we can come together as humanity. I believe in my faith, you believe in your faith, everyone believes, in faith. But in turn, we turn to that God who has created this universe, who has created this world. So we ask Him to show His mercy to the humanity and save our humanity from the brink of destruction. Thank you.
Many thanks, dear Imam Ikramul Haq. It was a very illuminating, wonderful talk. And now there is time for some music that has divine touch. The core of religions is mysticism, the divine experience, actually having experience of God, having seen the presence of God, say face to face. And thus, there will be 2 songs presented written by 2 Sufi mystics of not very long ago. They were from East Bengal, or earlier called East Pakistan, now called Bangladesh. Whatever the political definitions change, that is, but one of them was Lalan Fakir. Very touching, beautiful songs. The other is Murshid. So they transcended these divisions of religion. When you are in touch of God, then the paths do not matter, which path you took to come there. So you will see that these songs are very touching. One of them is actually in the praise of Krishna, not as a personal God as such. Krishna means the force of attraction. It is whatever attraction we feel in the world is truly the presence of God. That is what is attracting us. So that is one Lalan song. The songs, the English translation of those will be displayed here. The singer is Kasturi. I heard her a few months back in Connecticut, where she lives. And then I requested her, can you come and sing these songs here? And she was generous enough to readily agree. And so here we have Kasturi singing these songs. Accompanying her on harmonium is Tapos Talukdar, a very accomplished harmonium player. And on tabla is Amritpal Singh, who himself is a very good singer, and he will be singing afterwards two songs from one of them is from Sikh tradition, and another is from the Sufi tradition. Mainly it is very popular on this Karachi and those places. So very nice songs. So let us listen to those.
Hello, check, check, check. 1, 2, 3, check, check. Check, check. Sorry.
Hello.
Maharaji asked me to do this song, particular song he heard long back, so I'm honored and blessed. So, and he explained everything about the song and the songwriter. The first one is a Lalan song, and Baul and philosopher and composer and from Bangladesh. And the second one is a Murshid song, written and composed by Shah Abdul Karim. Murshid means guide, trainer who trains us or guides us to the God. It is in Sufism. Krishna preme pora deho ki diye jurai bolo shokhi ki diye jurai bolo shokhi Krishna preme pora deho Next one is, she says about Murshid, prayer to Murshid, can guide us to the God. Murshid dhan hai, Murshid dhan কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে তোমারে কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে মুর্শিদ ধন হে কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে তোমারে কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে দেখা দেও না কাছে নেও না আর কত থাকি দূরে দেখা দেও না কাছে নেও না আর কত থাকি দূরে মুর্শিদ ধন হে কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে তোমারে কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে মায়া জালে বন্দি হয়ে আর কতকাল থাকিব মনে ভাবি সব ছাড়িয়া তোমারে খুঁজে নিব মায়া জালে বন্দি হয়ে আর কতকাল থাকিব মনে ভাবি সব ছাড়িয়া তোমারে খুঁজে নিব আশা করি আলো পাবো ডুবে যাই অন্ধকারে আশা করি আলো পাবো ডুবে যাই অন্ধকারে মুর্শিদ ধন হে কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে তোমারে কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে তন্ত্র মন্ত্র করে দেখি তার ভিতরে তুমি নাই শাস্ত্র গ্রন্থ পড়ি যত আরো দূরে সরে যাই তন্ত্র মন্ত্র করি যত তার ভিতরে তুমি নাই শাস্ত্র গ্রন্থ পড়ি যত আরো দূরে সরে যাই কোন সাগরে খেলতেছ লাই ভাবতেছি তাই অন্তরে কোন সাগরে খেলতেছ লাই ভাবতেছি তাই অন্তরে মুর্শিদ ধন হে কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে তোমারে কেমনে চিনিব তোমারে মায়া জালে বন্দি হয়ে Thanks to all of you.
Many thanks, Kasturi. I forgot to mention, her husband was also accompanying her. And on, what is that instrument? Dutara. Dutara. And also another, that rhythm instrument, drum. So many thanks to actually look for the teacher, the guru. But it is, it is another expression of self-effort and the grace. You look for the guru and then you don't find, the guru finds you. So it is like that. Now our next speaker is a very interesting person in this field. You can see, he is the current head of the Inayati Maimuni lineage of Sufism. He studied history of religions at Michigan State University and contemplative religion at Naropa Institute before pursuing traditional studies in both Sufism and Hasidism with Jalman's, what is his, you pronounce that? Jalman Shastar, Shalomi, and various other teachers. So it is a very interesting combination, a Hasidic teacher and a teacher in the lineage of Inayat Khan, so Hazrat Inayat Khan. It is, he is, and then he has studied Vedanta, various different other religious streams, and in fact, this morning he was giving here a workshop on 8 limbs of Sufi yoga. Of course, he could, it was very beautifully presented. Those who were here, they must have felt that how a deep subject was being presented with ease as well as, understandable to everyone who was listening. So I requested him to come and he agreed readily. But there was a little glitch. Somehow by the grace of God that got solved. So he said, well, he has some other things have cropped up, so he will not be able to come. But then things arranged themselves in such a way that we have him here today. So another example of, self-effort and grace. So, so I request Nathaniel to present his thoughts.
I was sitting here earlier, very early on, while Reverend Trudy Jimpu was speaking, and I found myself not wanting to hear myself speak. I only wanted to go on hearing her. There's some things that make universal fellowship easy. And joy in one another's company, and joy in the companionship of people that are on the path with you, fellow travelers, and the road looks different for them in many ways. They're looking through their eyes and they're seeing from their perspective here and here beside you. But you're walking the same path, and there's a great joy in it. And I only wanted to listen to her. So now I've got a problem. I don't want to hear myself speak, and so I may not listen. As I was thinking about grace and self-effort from the Jewish perspective, I thought Judaism doesn't really talk about it. Not really, not about, it doesn't use the language of grace so much, or effort. Judaism, like Islam, tends to think in terms of what you must do. And it certainly implores mercy from God and asks that mercy, that grace be available, but continues to emphasize action. And as I thought about it, I felt that the idea of grace and effort, the relationship between the two, involves a mystery, and not one that I think I'm capable of solving. But, as often happens, a story occurred to me. It's a story from the Hasidic tradition, a mashal, really. A mashal is a parable. And it's a parable that's told by one of the great storytellers of the Hasidic tradition, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. Told by other masters also, and curiously, the same story exists in the Sufi tradition. And it's probably earlier in Sufism than it is in Hasidism. And it shows the kind of cross-fertilization that exists between traditions, because the Hasidic masters of Eastern Europe were often making the journey to the Holy Land. And in order to make that journey, they had to pass through Istanbul. And they clearly picked up stories, and Rabbi Nachman among them. And so the same story exists in various Sufi texts. But when it comes to Rabbi Nachman, it sounds very Jewish. And it goes like this. Once in a little shtetl, a little village in Eastern Europe, where the Jews were within a small village of non-Jews, there would be even smaller village called a shtetl of Jews. And in such a poor village lived a very poor man named Yankel, which is a way of talking about somebody named Yaakov, Jacob. And Yankel, or Yankele, lived in this poor shtetl, and the poorest man in the shtetl, with the poorest house, a shack, a hovel really. And in his little shack there was a door, but the door was hanging off the hinges. An empty room that he has, that is his one room, and he lives in this little shack, this hovel with the door hanging off the hinges. And in his little shack, at night, he has a dream. And in the dream, this poor little Jew in the shtetl in the middle of the Ukraine dreams of Vienna. 1,000 miles away, Vienna, Austria, and he dreams of a fabulous bridge that is outside the royal palace. And in the dream, he can see every detail of the bridge and the palace and the whole surroundings, and he can see himself approaching it, and he can see that if he goes under the bridge, he'll find a treasure. If he digs in a certain spot, he'll find a treasure. And he wakes in the morning and he thinks, well, it's not so unexpected that a very poor man should have such a dream of going to a fabulous city of wealth and finding a great treasure. But then he has the dream again. And again, and again, and again, for weeks, the same dream, in the same detail, in the same order. And you have the same dream for weeks on end, and you start to think maybe there's something to it. And the thought to this poor man becomes almost maddening. And so he thinks, what do I have to lose? Maybe I should do something about it. So like in the old cartoons, he takes a cloth, he puts his little belongings in it, puts a loaf of bread in there and ties it to the end of a stick and throws it over his shoulders and begins to walk. From his little town, Bratslav in the Ukraine, it is a 2 weeks journey, 1,000 miles to Vienna. And so he walks, and he can't afford a ride. Every once in a while, somebody comes by with a hay cart and allows him to hop on. 2 weeks, it's a lot of walking, a lot of riding in a hay cart, a lot of sleeping on the ground under bushes, in barns where he can steal in secretly. And after 2 weeks' long journey this way, he comes to Vienna. And indeed, he sees the bridge exactly as he'd seen it in the dream, a bridge that he had had no access to knowing what that bridge would look like in real life, whether such a bridge would actually exist, but he'd seen it in his dream, and it looks exactly the same. And in the distance beyond the bridge is indeed the royal palace. Now he knows, under that bridge he will find the treasure. How could he have known about such a bridge, such a palace? So he begins to run. He's running, the thirst is upon him now. Now he will have his riches and he will be a rich man. And he runs and runs at breakneck speed until he sees something he had not seen in his dream, and he stops dead in his tracks and almost falls over. 2 sentries at the corners of the bridge. The royal guard. And now he doesn't know what to do. 2 large, intimidating men. And he, an old man, poverty-stricken, a Jew, born to misery in the Ukraine and not much better in Vienna. The royal guards are not going to treat him well. There's no history of this. So he does what you would expect. He starts to fret and stand there and look nervously and slyly toward the bridge and pace back and forth. And he goes on doing this for about an hour until he hears a shout. "Hey, Jew, what are you doing?" It's the guards. "Get over here." Finally, he comes over, head bowed, can't resist the order of the guards. They say, "What are you doing? You've been standing there for an hour like an idiot. Do you have some notion of begging from the royal family when they cross the bridge? If you do, it's time to head on." And already having him by the shoulders and asking him what he's doing, he's terrified and shaking, and in his panic, he begins to do the only thing he can think of: tell them the truth. And so he begins to sputter out the story of the dream. He had the dream 2 months ago, and then it again and again and again, and under the bridge there must be this treasure. And if only they'll let him dig there, he would share at least half, more than half, all of it. You can have almost all of it. Leave me a little something to get back, Panicked, sweating. And then one of the guards staring at him sternly. He knows he's about to get a whack. And unexpectedly, the guard laughs. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. What an idiot. What are you doing following your dreams? If I followed my dreams, what would happen? Last night, I had a dream that, listen to this, I had a dream that I made the 2-week, 1,000-mile journey to some nowhere town in the Ukraine called Bratslav or something, and in a shack in which some old Jew must have lived, in a shack, a hovel really, with a door hanging off the hinges. And inside the shack I go, and behind a little stove in the back there's a loose floorboard, and I pull up this floorboard and there's a treasure. How likely am I to find a treasure in the middle of a shack in the Ukraine? This is what comes from listening to your dreams. Look at you. You're 2 weeks on the road. What an idiot. Yanko says, thank you very much. It was very nice to meet you. Please, you may go on now. And sets out on the road. And again, long 2-week journey, on foot, getting a ride when he can, sleeping under bushes, sleeping in a barn when he can. And he arrives home and runs to the door and swings it open. The door flies off and finally falls on the ground. Goes to the back. He knows about the floorboard. It's been loose for years, but why would he look under it? Rats. What do you expect to find in it? He pulls the floorboard up, and indeed, a treasure. And as Rabbi Nachman, the great storyteller, would say, sometimes you have to go very far in order to find what you always had, what was very near to you. This is the curious mystery about being human. This curious phenomena that always we cannot seem to be able to see what we already have, and often can only see it reflected in someone else's eyes, or need to be told what is perfectly obvious to someone else about ourselves. Can we get there without seeing it reflected? Can we get there without taking the long journey? Some people say we can. We've seen very little evidence of it. I was having a conversation with a great teacher whom many of you may have heard, Father Thomas Keating, the founder of the Centering Prayer Movement, a wonderful person and a great monk and great scholar and deep human being. And he was telling me about certain teachers who were coming to him and who were saying that all you need to do is yield to presence. The divine presence is there, waiting, and you need to only lay back into it and soak. All this efforting is to no avail and no account. We're making it too hard on ourselves. And he was really holding this question because he really is a wise man, and he was really thinking about it. And he says, but you know, Nathaniel, I don't know how I could have gotten there without the dark nights, without the pain of the journey. I didn't have the eyes to see. The thing that I'm being told is perfectly obvious, that is right there, always available, and indeed I believe it is. I believe God's grace is always there, perfectly available, and perfectly obvious, except to me. And maybe because it is supposed to be so obvious, that it is so ordinary, that it is just so ordinary that we are inured to it and have no eyes to see it. And so we have this difficulty of having to learn to see what is perfectly obvious. Is my time up? I heard it. You know, you can't just plant in any ground. You know, any gardener knows that you have to cultivate the soil. I wanted to plant in the backyard where I had a new house, and I wanted to plant a garden and grow things. And I went out to the backyard and discovered that I had clay, red clay, this deep. And had to spend hours digging and turning that clay up, and then putting in fertilizer and mixing it in with dry material and leaves from the fall and turning it over and over and over so that something would grow there. And it was a tremendous effort. You know, unless the earth is cultivated and enriched in a certain way, the seed is not going to grow. And it's hard to escape that. By some miracle, given the right conditions, that seed will grow. And its own growth is miraculous and full of grace. And yet there are causes and conditions that aid it. And we participate in those. We are, as you were saying, the wave is not separate from the ocean. We're the ocean. Our effort is not separate from the grace that is happening. We are agents of grace. And it may look like effort as we think of ourselves as the wave. But in some ways, that's thinking about the whole effort and grace is still thoughts as an individual, as a wave. But as the ocean, we're the agents of grace. And there's only the grace. And as the ocean, we are agents of grace for others, not necessarily thinking about what will be grace for us. But it is our duty, our reality, that we cultivate and seed the planet with our own bodies. That's what we are to the earth. We sink back into it. We fertilize it. Maybe we're not different than the wind or the rain. I was thinking again about how in Judaism we don't tend to think in terms of grace and self-effort, as I was saying, but in the mystical teachings of the Jewish tradition, in the Kabbalah, that which is received, the received tradition, the oral tradition, we do talk about chesed and gevura, two divine qualities that exist in a dialectical tension. Chesed being loving kindness, the equivalent of grace, that one of God's great qualities is loving kindness, chesed. Chesed in the Kabbalah is like a big hug. It is the equivalent, if you were to personify it, the equivalent of that person that you know that always wants to hug you and just as equally wants to be hugged all the time. This might be a bear of a man that just wants to hold you and enjoys your hug just as much and is full of this loving kindness, or a mother with a soft love, always available. And that's chesed. But in our world, chesed by itself can be problematic. Sometimes chesed is a little too unbounded. He wants to hug everybody, but not everybody wants to be hugged. And sometimes that person with that kind of ebullient love, that overwhelming desire to give, often gets taken advantage of. You all know that child, or perhaps you were that child, that had so much to give and then got your hand slapped. Or were told that was wrong. And it's that chesed, that loving kindness, that raw chesed or loving kindness is without boundaries. It's its nature. And so the corollary or corrective to it on the other side is gevura. Gevura literally means strength, but it translates in quality to discipline or boundaries. It's considered a feminine quality to have boundaries, to self-protect, to be aware enough to know that you might get taken advantage of, and to counterbalance chesed. These two qualities are necessary to one another. There's a third quality in the tradition. They form a triad on what some of you may have seen, the tree of life, the Eitz Chaim diagram. So you have chesed, loving kindness, and it's like a parent who, hearing their child cry, wants to give them anything that they want and do. Gevura on the other side says, no, you don't need it. You'll never have it. Stop crying. And then the corrective in the middle that counterbalances the two is a quality that's called tiferet, beauty, which is also compared to rechem, the womb, Rahman in Arabic, compassion. And compassion says, as a parent, I hear you saying what you want. I don't know that you necessarily need that. Hearing your want, I'll give you what you need, not necessarily what you want. So we need the two to exist in this dialectical tension to resolve itself in a third kind of understanding, knowing that they're constantly in collaboration toward a certain end. It reminds me of a little story of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, a mystical movement within Judaism that started in the Ukraine, and his great-grandson was Rabbi Nachman, who told the story, the original story that I told. And he once went to a town to win a convert to Hasidism. The man was already a famous rabbi and a deeply ascetic mystic, a powerful sermoner. And the Baal Shem Tov goes into this man's town and just stops in the town square early in the morning. And as a man passes, he says, he asks directions. And the man stops to give him directions. And the Baal Shem Tov starts a story. Oh, that reminds me. And he begins a story. And pretty soon, the man is listening in rapt attention to the Baal Shem Tov story. And then another man passes by and catches part of the story and is intrigued. And he stays to listen. The story gets bigger, and pretty soon there's a crowd of townspeople listening to the story. And this is early in the morning, and the first person on the way that he passes along the way, that he stops to tell the story, turned out to be the attendant at the synagogue. And the attendant's job at the synagogue was to get there very early to unlock the doors for the very pious rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polanoia, that the Baal Shem Tov has come to convert. And he gets to the synagogue that day, passes a huge crowd. He doesn't know what's going on. He can't see what's at the center of it. Goes on to the synagogue, very angry. What is all this noise and commotion in the morning? Gets to the synagogue, and the door is locked. And now, this ascetic, this pious ascetic, becomes very angry. He's incensed because he cannot do his service to God. And in anger, he goes to find the attendant, breaks through the crowd, pushes people apart, and finds the attendant at the center of the crowd talking to a man that looks like a peasant. He grabs him and shakes him. Why didn't you open the door to the synagogue? I have service to God to do. And the man said, I'm so sorry. I got caught up in the story. The stories are amazing. He says, says, don't tell me about stories. Get and unlock the door. Then he turns to the peasant. What are you doing keeping him from his work? He's got holy work to do, and I have holy work to do. And you've kept all these people from their work with your stories. Come to the synagogue. I want to have a talk with you. He's going to set him straight. So he brings the man to the synagogue and says, what were you doing? And the man says, let me tell you a story. It's the Baal Shem Tov. This is what he does. He's the master of the holy name, the holy word. And he begins to tell him a story about horses and carriages. And he says, what is this? And he says, you know, with a horse and a carriage, if you hold the reins too tight, the horse cannot neigh. And the rabbi was a very learned man and deeply sincere in his holy work. But he realized what the message was. He was holding things too tight, and he had no joy in his spiritual life. There was no joy in it anymore because he was holding so tight all the time. Very much as the Buddha was saying, if the strings on the vina are too tight, they threaten to break all the time. If too loose, on the other hand, you'll get no note out of it. I don't know what I'm doing with the violin and a bow and a vina. Toss that away. You get no sound out of it. So, wait on grace, maybe there's no sound. Too much effort, the thing breaks. It's inattention. One last story. A famous story that's in the Talmud. There are two great rabbis in the Talmud, and they're often paired as opposites. Hillel, after whom the Hillel organizations that you have in every college town are named, this great compassionate rabbi of the Talmud who represents chesed, loving kindness. And his counterpart, equally pious, Shammai, who represents Gevurah. And one is not thought greater than the other. But they take two different approaches, one of discipline, one of loving kindness, grace. A Greek man, who's thinking of converting, goes to Shammai, who he hears is the great scholar of Torah, of the Bible, and says, I'm thinking of converting. I like your religion. I like what I've seen. I'm a busy man. Perhaps you might tell me the whole of the Torah, the essence of the Torah that you can tell me while I'm standing on one foot. And if you can convey the essence to me while I'm standing on one foot, perhaps I'll be convinced and convert. Shammai looks at the man sternly, looks around, grabs a stick, and whacks him. He says, now go away. And the man runs away, holding himself and his hurt arm and his face bruised, and runs off, and he has no idea what's happened. So he goes to see Hillel, who he hears is a nicer guy. And he does the same thing. Hillel, I'm a Greek, and I'm thinking of converting to Judaism. I like what I've heard so far. Perhaps you convince me, telling me the whole of the Torah or the essence of the Torah that you can tell me while I'm standing on one foot. He's conditioned, right? And Hillel looks at the man, looks at him, and says, that which you would not like done to you, don't do to somebody else. The rest is commentary. Go and learn. And the man goes, equally surprised to when he got hit with the stick. Now, what I like to point out is that he was given the same teaching by both. Shammai was a little more direct. That hurt, did it? Don't do that to someone. Go and learn now. Now, what had happened to him with Shammai and getting whacked by the stick conditioned him to receive the second message. And that's the difficult teaching that we're always faced with in life. The hard journey, the difficulties, condition the heart to receive grace. Thank you.
Many thanks, dear Nathaniel. We heard many different nice perspectives. And Nathaniel is author of so many wonderful books on Sufism and Hasidic traditions. Now there will be music from Sikh tradition as well as from the Sufi tradition. Amritpal Singh, he will be singing while playing harmonium, and his son, Meher Singh, will be accompanying him on tabla. Although he, looks so tiny, small, but still you will hear wonderful tabla, really matching his dad's tabla.
Today I'm going to sing Shabad written by 5th Nanak, Guru Arjan Dev Ji. And before this Shabad, he written, which is Guru Granth Sahib, Sikh Bible, Sikh Granth start with it, Ik Oankar, God is one. Sat Nam, his name is true. Karta Purak, he is the creator. Nirpao, he loves everyone. Nirvair, he don't hate no one. Akal Murat, no one can tell how he looks like it. Ajuni Sebang, he don't come, he don't goes, he's everywhere. We'll start with that. I know program is running a little bit late. Some speakers took more time than they're supposed to be, which is okay. And I'm a singer, like I'll be finished in 9 minutes, not 10 minutes. And the Shabad I'm going to sing it, I want my son to explain to you guys in English, because if you heard my English, you will not understand my accent. So I'm gonna make him to explain to you guys, and then I'll sing it. Make sure you speak loud.
Ram Kali, fifth mel. Some call him Ram Ram, some call him Kudai. Some serve him as Gusai, others as Allah. He is the cause of the causes, the generous Lord. He showers his grace and mercy upon us. Pause. Some bathe at sacred shrines of pilgrimage, and some make the pilgrimage to Mecca. Some perform devotional worship services, and some bow their heads in prayer. Some read the Vedas, and some read the Quran. Some wear blue robes, and some wear white. Some call themselves Muslim, and some call themselves Hindu. Some yearn for paradise, and others long for heaven. Says Nanak, one who realizes the hukam of God's will.
Vaheguru 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 Ik ਓਂਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਆਜੂਨੀ ਸਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀਮ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀਮ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀ ਕਰੀਮ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀਮ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਤਰ ਰਹੀਮ ਰਹੀਮ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀ ਕਰੀਮ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀਮ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਤਰ ਰਹੀਮ ਰਹੀਮ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀਮ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀਮ ਕੋਈ ਬੋਲੇ ਰਾਮ 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 ਕੋਈ ਬੋਲ ਰਾਮ ਰਾਮ ਕੋਈ ਖੁਦਾਏ ਕੋਈ ਸੇਵੈ ਗੋ ਸਈਆਂ ਕੋਈ ਅਲਾਏ ਅਲਾਏ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀ ਕਰੀਮ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀਮ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਤਰ ਰਹੀਮ ਰਹੀਮ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਰੀਮ ਕੋਈ ਨਾਵੇ ਤੀਰਥ ਕੋਈ ਹਜ ਜਾਏ ਕੋਈ ਨਾਵੇ ਤੀਰਥ ਕੋਈ ਹਜ ਜਾਏ नवाए, कोई करे पूजा कोई सिर निवाए, कोई पढ़े वेद कोई कतेब, कोई ओढ़ नीर कोई सुपेद सुपेद, कारण करण करी करीम, कारण करण करीम कृपा तार रहीम रहीम, कारण करण करीम, कारण करण करीम। कोई कहे तुर्क कोई कहे हिंदू, कोई कहे तुर्क कोई कहे हिंदू, कोई बाछे पिसत कोई सिर गे। कहो नानक जिन हुक्म पछाता, प्रभ साहेब का तिन पेद जाता जाता, कारण करण करी करीम, कारण करण करीम कृपा तार रहीम रहीम, कारण करण करीम। कोई बोले राम 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 राम, कोई बोले राम राम, कोई खुदाए, कोई सेवे गोसैया, कोई अलाए अलाए, कारण करण करी करीम, कारण करण करीम कृपा तार रहीम रहीम, कारण करण करी करीम, कारण करण करी करीम, कारण करण करीम, कारण करण करी। Thank you very much. Thank you.
Many thanks, Amritpal Singh ji, and his
Meher Singh.
wonderful tabla player son, Meher Singh. Amritpal Singh always, whenever we request him, he comes and presents his wonderful music. Now the final talk in this symposium to be presented by Swami Tyaganandaji from the Vedanta Society of Boston. He is well known to you all here. He comes almost every year for the Universal Brotherhood Day program and is well known for his very beautiful analytical approach and yet synthesizing everything together. These two, he has that skills in speaking in this matter. So it is. So I request him now to come and present his speech.
Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. I'm grateful to Swami Yogatmanandaji for inviting me here to share a few thoughts with you. I know it's late, so I'm not, what I hope to do, I just share one or two ideas that come to my mind on the topic grace and self-effort. We've had very illuminating talks, and there's so many ideas have come up during the exchange that we had. One of the challenges that we have when we speak about the subject from different religious perspectives is the meaning of words, because we have all the previous speakers, and even I will be using the word God, I'm using the word grace and effort, and while we might all use the same word, we probably may not exactly be meaning the same thing. And that's one of the challenges in any kind of a dialogue. And therefore it's always good to, helpful certainly, to define in what sense I'm using the term God, or in what sense I'm using the term effort. In general, it might be possible to say that as human beings, as people who think, who question, who try to understand, the three factors that we are generally trying to juggle with are, first of all, the person, me, trying to understand all this, then the world that I encounter, and then those amongst us who feel that there is more to existence than just me and the world, that there is something higher, something, well, there is a third something. And that third something, which is different from me, or at least distinct from me as a person, distinct from the world that I encounter, in general, we call it God. It. You see, there is the problem of gender again. So, essentially, these are the three things. God, by that I mean the third something, the world, and me. And how these three are interrelated amongst themselves, and the different ways these relationships are configured, that is how different religious traditions have emerged. And all of these traditions would make complete sense and would be meaningful if we study it within the paradigm that they present. But if we try to take up one thing from one tradition and just kind of fit it in, it just doesn't work that way. And so it's good to know the parameters within which we speak. So I'm going to use the word in the next just 5 minutes or so, or 10 minutes, or whatever time it takes, to self-effort is pretty much, it's relatively easy. I'm just understanding a layperson's understanding of it is, well, the things that I can do myself. And grace, whichever theological interpretation one might put upon it, is what I cannot do and what God or that third being does for me. Something that I cannot do, but God does. And there is a tension, as some of the earlier speakers have pointed out, between these two things. While we can speak about grace and self-effort, oftentimes the debate is between grace or self-effort, or grace versus self-effort, or either of these two have any absolute standing on its own. To a larger or a lesser degree, all of us have experienced things in life which we are not able to find any logical human explanation for them. And therefore those things for which we don't have any immediate understanding, but something which we know has really happened, something that cannot be denied, we say, well, it's an act of grace. And there are, of course, things we know we have to struggle for. it's possible for a student of Vedanta to understand that the tension between grace and self-effort, the reason for the tension is because of the tension between me, self, and God. The relationship between the self, which is the self in the self-effort involved, and God. If the two are completely distinct and unconnected in any way, then what God does will not be in any form connected with what I do, if the relationship is one of complete distinction. And therefore, whatever happens, whatever God does, might seem to be just random or whimsical also. But for devotees of God, they see that thing as mysterious, or sometimes referred to as unconditional, because we are not able to find any reason why God would or would not do something. Now, if that relationship is not of complete distinction, that if somehow I, as an individual, is related to the divine, there is some kind of a relationship, then there is also a relationship between what I do and what God does. So, the connection between grace, seen as what God does, and self-effort, seen as what I do, that relationship is directly related, directly connected to my relationship with God. The more I feel that I am connected to God in some way, then I also begin to see the connection between what God does with what I do. And when this relationship, Swami Vivekananda once defined religion as the eternal relationship between eternal God and eternal soul. Now, as we begin to discover our relationship with this transcendent being, and as this relationship gets stronger and stronger, we come closer and closer. And ultimately, the relationship of love, that bond that exists between devotee and God, it reaches its culmination when the two become one. I mean, that's how love functions. The highest that any loving relationship can take to is unity. So when the seeker, the spiritual seeker, or the seeker of truth, and the truth itself, no matter how you conceive of that truth, become one, then the tension between grace and self-effort disappears, because then it's only the self that remains. Whether you call that self human or divine, I just don't give it any name. It just doesn't matter. So we have to live with this tension between grace and self-effort, as long as there is this tension between my discovering how I'm related to God. Sri Ramakrishna often told his disciples, and he said, all that you need to know of who I am and who you are and how we are connected. That was a way of saying that our spiritual quest becomes more meaningful if we have some initial understanding of who I am and what that goal or what that being is and how the two of us are related. So discovering the relationship between me and the God that I worship, and if I'm able to discover that relationship and at least hold it as a tentative understanding, knowing that that can change, that can evolve, that can deepen. And when that happens, then we discover that this conflict between how much of what I do should be done by me and how much of my responsibility will be taken by God, that conflict disappears. We normally say, I mean, many of us have heard saying, God helps those who help themselves. That makes complete sense, of course. We have to do our part, and then God does his or her part. Again, limiting God to only his would be limiting God also. So that's something we have heard. Here's another idea, which seems completely opposite to it. Swami Vivekananda once said, God helps those who do not help themselves. Now that just seems like crazy because it's just opposite to the first one. But think about it this way. When we say self-effort, what is the self to most of us? In our present state, the self that we have is nothing but our ego. As long as the ego is holding fort, as long as the ego is strong, everything that I feel I'm doing, I will never even understand, recognize the function of God in my life. So this ego, this false self, has to go out of the way in order for the real self, the real me, to shine. And when that happens, then I'm not really doing anything. So things happen in life. Now, to take credit for something or to appropriate something as my action, just one small example. For instance now, here's this bottle of water, and I'm going to drink it. Now I can say I am drinking water. But philosophically, just think about it. What exactly has happened? Well, here is this bottle of water with some sets of atoms and molecules configured in a certain way, held in a hand. And well, we know the chemical composition of the human body. We know that dust returns to dust, and we know what happens after we die. It's either a heap of ashes or a heap of dust. So it's being held by this hand. I'm pouring it into this thing called mouth. So all of these things are happening, kind of cut the long story short, is just this, some bunch of material particles here being held by this material particle and just being added onto it. How does this activity being referred to as I am drinking water, where does this I come in? And this I comes in because somehow this particular configuration I begin to see as me. And now, when I see this particular thing as me, this idea of me, this self, is an exciting idea in some way because I know I'm someone, but it's also a terrifying idea. The moment I limit myself to this, I suddenly encounter the world which is not me. So the idea of the self always comes along with the idea of not self. And we discover that the not self is much bigger, much more powerful. Look at what's happening now, the storms. We can build buildings, we can do a lot of things. Nature's fury knows no bounds. In a matter of seconds, nature can completely remove, destroy what we can do. So the moment I limit myself to this, I discover the world outside which is more powerful, which can destroy me any moment. All our existential problems, the problem of mortality, the problem of the aging, sickness, death, these are the kind of basic human condition. All of this happens because I limit myself to saying this is me, and then I have to figure out what to do with this not me. Now what Vedanta tries to do is make us take a firm and deeper look at this self, that this self which I see is myself. And you look inside and say, is this really myself? But if this is myself, well, a few years ago, this self weighed only a few pounds. Now it weighs a lot more. A few years from now, this self, where will it go? Did this self exist before, did I exist before I was born? Most religions say, well, you will exist in some form, some kind of a postmortem existence in a good place or a bad place called heaven or hell again, that we somehow might exist even after the body goes. But what about, did I exist before I was born? Now, these are the different kind of questions that can come to us. And the challenge before the different religious traditions is to somehow try to find an answer within the framework that they present about how to answer these questions. I will just conclude by mentioning just the simple thing that many of you who have been coming to Vedanta Society for a long time are already aware, that Vedanta says that there is a deeper reality within me which is non-material. And because it is non-material, it doesn't have to follow the laws of matter. But at present, my personality, which includes the body and mind, these are material entities. So at present, we might say, to simplify, that I am a kind of a combination of matter and non-matter, or spirit. If I limit my understanding of self to the spirit, I become free. All of the problems that we experience in life are either related to the body or the mind. And if I can find a way of identifying myself only with the spirit and not with the body and mind, actually most of my problem is solved. And body and mind can remain. The body and mind doesn't have to disappear. We know your car, your computer, they are useful, they are great. But you didn't, well, most of us, we never say, I am my car. We don't say, I am my computer. We have no doubt that they are not myself, but they are useful, and I can take good care of them. Why can I not do the same thing with my body and mind? Well, this is the home that God gave me the moment I was born. And since I have to live in it all through my life, I'm going to take good care of it. But my home is not me. My home can be destroyed, but I won't be destroyed. Death doesn't mean my end. So this way of understanding, kind of recovering the true self, when that happens, then the distinction between self-effort and grace completely disappears. Because then the self within me, the reality within me, and the reality beyond this entire creation are not two different things. That is what the insight that we get from Vedanta. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's the only truth or that's the only way to say it. All that I'm saying is that the framework that the Vedanta presents, in that framework, this is how these things get explained. Now, we might have a different framework in which there might be a different way of explaining the same thing. So we need to figure out in our own life how the questions that we have in our heart, how best to understand them. And whichever way resonates with our head and heart, we should feel the freedom to live by it. And finally, one simple thought. Talking about religion or reading about religion is endless. It can never stop. And we can go on talking, and I won't do that. But the test of spiritual life is not how much you have read, or how many lectures you have attended, or how many books you have attended, and so on. But that's great. I mean, that inspires us, that gives us education. But education is completely useless unless and until somehow it enters into the way I think, the way I relate with other people, the way I do my work, the way it changes my life. So in order for my learning, in order for my inspiration to have a life transformative effect on me, I must live it. And therefore, here's this one simple thought. All the great ideas that we have had the opportunity to hear today, whatever makes sense, don't accept anything blindly. But if it makes sense, if it resonates with your head and heart, ask that question. Waking up tomorrow morning, how can I live according to it? All the theoretical knowledge that we have acquired will disappear when we die. According to Vedanta, what will not go is the real transformation that has occurred within. That's the only thing that we can carry with us after death. And so, Swami, again, I'll just end with Swami Vivekananda's quote. He said, an ounce of practice is worth 1,000 tons of theory. So let's try to absorb the different ideas that were expressed today, and the different ideas, not just today, but other ideas that you have been exposed to through various sources in your life. See what makes sense, see what resonates with you, see what will help you in your journey. And to the extent we are able to live according to them, our lives will become truly blessed. Thank you.
Many thanks, dear Tyaganandaji. And we are almost close to the conclusion. I heartily thank all the speakers. To cut the matter short, I am not taking names of anybody. I am very, very thankful to all the musicians who have presented their music here. Many have come from a long distance. And of course, I am very, very thankful to all of you who attended today's program. There are some special attendees. Well, one of them is Pravrajika Satchit Prana, a nun from Sardamath in India. She has come here and she was present here. And then I will introduce one more very special person attending this program, and that is Abhishek Kumar Sharma. Abhishek, please come here. He is on a world bicycle tour. And the tour is for propagating the understanding of climate change and having clean energy and so forth. He is from a village near Mathura in Uttar Pradesh. He has already traveled on bicycle about 41,000 kilometers, over 25,000 miles, and 40 countries. And then he has come here just some days back, and now we don't have time to let him speak as such from the podium, but he will be here, and as you will have your wonderful dinner, please talk to him about his experience. There is a volume of experience there that he has gained. And of course, we are, having got delayed by more than half an hour. We can be very punctual if we are given enough time to be. It is. So, but we shall conclude with a couple of our regular songs. This meeting will not be complete without that. That is the song that is, we say, Namaste. That brings all the races, all the different religions together in this beautiful word, Namaste. So, Peter, Rahul, Swapna, Abhijit, please come forward, and you can all join in singing this song. And then there will be the prayers for today, Divine Mother, to conclude, and then we will all go for the supper that is, as usual, prepared by the volunteers of India Heritage Museum and Community Center. Mahesh Patel, his wife, Kulbhushan Chaudhary, and many others have helped in making that. Our sincere thanks to them. So, and then this will be the program, our regular programs beginning every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. We have talks here. You can look at the schedule and come for that. And then one more announcement before I stop, and that is about the terrible natural calamities that have recently happened. Harvey and now Irma has pounded these areas, causing a lot of suffering. So we have decided to appeal for funds from you. We will match those funds from the Vedanta Society funds, and then we'll send it through another organization to Red Cross. That organization will also be matching our collection. So what you gave will be 4 times multiplied when it reaches the relief work area. So you can send it by checks or credit card. You can come here by credit card. We won't accept cash for this purpose because keeping record becomes difficult. So you can put cash in that box and that will be added to it. So, namaste.
So please join in, and keep in mind that there's no excuse not to be singing. Actually, vocal quality is not as important as volume.
Exactly. Exactly.
But this is a tradition that we have here on
For many years.
Exactly.
Namaste, namaste. I salute the divine in you. In India, they say what's so true. I salute the divine in you. Namaste, namaste. I salute the divine in you. In India, they say what's so true. I salute the divine in you. From Africa, you may be from Asia, you may be from Australia, but there's something the same in all of us. Namaste, namaste, I salute the divine in you. In India they say what's so true, I salute the divine in you. You may be from America, you may be from Europe, you may be from Ireland, there's something the same in all of us. Namaste, namaste, I salute the divine in you. In India, this is what's so true, I salute the divine in you. You may be a Christian, you may be Islamic, you may be Hebraic, there's something the same in all of us. Namaste, namaste, I salute the divine in you. In India, this is what's so true, I salute the divine in you. If you are an American, you'll be my nowadays. If you are an Hindu, there's something the same in all of us. Namaste, namaste, I salute the divine in you. In India, this is what's so true, I salute the divine in you. Namaste, namaste, I salute the divine in you. In India, this is what's so true, I salute the divine in you. I salute the divine in you. I salute the divine in you. All right. Good on.
So let us say grace and proceed to the basement for the dinner. Those of you who know, please join. It will be also on the board there. Om Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaivate Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina Hari Om Tat Sat Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, please accept our offerings. Bless us. Make us pure and all-loving. May we not accuse, demand, or complain, but love, respect, and cooperate with all. May we not find faults with others, but try to find our own faults. May we not treat others as strangers, but learn to make all our own. May we feel the whole world to be our own. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.